Welcome back, everyone. I brought Groot again. He's always here. We're always gonna be here together. It's another week. It's another pick of the Filmstruck Film Club. I'm your host, Carson Higgins. We already said what up to Groot again. But yeah, if this is your very first time checking us out, we are the Filmstruck Film Club. Filmstruck may not exist anymore, but we use the Criterion Channel and other streamers to watch international films, classic films, maybe kind of overlooked films, underlooked films, I don't know. But yeah, we pick a movie a week. You have the whole week to watch it. I'll finish up the week by doing a little bit of this, and then we'll pick another film. Usually, I would have had this video out by now, but let me tell y'all, I got my second dose of the vaccine, and it kind of laid me out yesterday. I would have had this video out a day sooner, but I know it's not a big deal. This movie that we watched is like 50 years old, so, you know, no rush. What's another day? We watched a great milk. What the fuck? We watched a great movie this week. We watched McCabe and Mrs Miller, Robert Altman's 1971 anti-Western classic. Anti-Western, you ask? That's just kind of what I saw when I was looking it up. Anti-Western being, what did he say? Altman was quoted as saying that he wanted to make a Western with no dust. Since this film takes place in the Pacific Northwest, it's a far different experience from, say, a John Wayne Stagecoach, kind of what you're used to seeing in a Hollywood Western. People tend to be a little bit more costumed in those films. There's a little bit more of an air of like superficiality. This film is rugged and raw. People are spitting and cussing and burping and farting, and there's, you know, syphilitic hookers, and we weren't holding back in this film. I could imagine when it came out in 71, it was probably even more in your face, right? If you're like me and you watched Deadwood on HBO, or I would even go so far as to say if you saw the film The Revenant, Leonardo DiCaprio's crawling through the mud, Academy Award winner, even that kind of seems to borrow from McCabe and Mrs Miller and what Robert Altman was kind of pioneering, pun intended, I guess, with this film. Let's just go over a couple facts for you. First of all, this is not our first Robert Altman film that we've watched in this club. We watched The Player a while back, his 1991 film about Hollywood starring Tim Robbins. That's a blast. So if you haven't seen The Player, it's extra special. But Robert Altman's a very famous filmmaker, and in the 70s he was just knocking them out one after the other. Some other famous films of his obviously are MASH, The Long Goodbye, Nashville, which is so good. Gosford Park was one of his later masterpieces. This guy worked with excellent ensembles. Something about his films, it just kind of feels like the camera was placed in the middle of a bustling community because you know, Paul Thomas Anderson has famously basically made two more Robert Altman films with Magnolia and Boogie Nights. They very much borrow from the spirit of Robert Altman with these interweaving character plots and whatnot. There's plenty to look up if you're interested. By golly, there's plenty to look up. But this film is special. It's in the AFI Top 10 Westerns. It's number 8. Amazing, especially considering it was kind of not very well reviewed when it came out, which is a whole nother funny story about how the copy of the film that was given to the critics was like a shitty one with bad audio or something, so it got bad reviews. And then this critic went on Dick Cavett and famously was like, yo, this movie's actually pretty great, and I hope that people give it a second chance because it's going to be an American classic. And she was absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, the look of the movie is easily like probably the thing that you're going to notice immediately. Like right out the gate, it's just beautiful Pacific Northwest with this Leonard Cohen music. The Leonard Cohen music is used beautifully throughout the film. It just kind of gave it I kept feeling this like sense of humor trying to bubble up throughout the film, and it shows up every once in a while. But the music would then kind of like soften it, almost like stop getting my hopes up about this sense of humor. Like I felt like I was going to be kind of more in a Coen Brothers sort of world. Maybe like a Oh Brother Where Art Thou, Or even like how Fargo, as dark as it is kind of funny. I kept feeling like we were going to be chiseling into that feeling, and we barely do. It's a really kind of delicate, nuanced thing where it's like, yeah, it's part of the world that we're in, but we're not going to take too much time focusing on it. It's not the focus of this. Yeah, I mean, I love the top of these where I'm just like talking and talking and talking. And if you haven't watched the movie, which if you haven't watched the movie, go watch it. But I always think it's funny. I'm talking and talking, and it's like, at no point have we talked at all about what the movie's about. Warren Beatty is the star of this movie, and he plays John McCabe, who is a card dealer, who is part of this town called Presbyterian Church, and he's kind of building up the town. He's opening a whorehouse. He's got this casino going, which is kind of that Deadwood thing I was mentioning at the very beginning. It's kind of this like town that's, you can feel it growing. You can feel the town growing, and there's that element of like, you can go search for gold or you can sell shovels, you know? So he's trying to sell some shovels, I guess, by selling pussy to the miners that are going to be working their tails off putting this town together. And then, of course, we get to meet our other lead, Julie Christie, Mrs. Miller. I don't know why she's Mrs. Miller. Is she married? I don't know. It doesn't matter. But she's exquisite in this movie. You may have been like, hey, wait a minute. Didn't I just? Yes, you did, because we watched Don't Look Now only a couple months ago, and she's the star of that with Donald Sutherland. So Julie Christie, she's just Hollywood royalty, but she was the only Academy Award nomination for this film. Did you know that? I didn't either. I had to look it up. But she was nominated for Best Actress for this film, and rightly so. You know who she reminded me of? She reminded me a whole lot of Ruth from Ozark. Yes, the Netflix show. And that's another one that kind of borrows from this same tone, right? This idea of this anti-Western. It's almost like noir Western, but not. It's just, it kind of, it's funny how it's seemingly like carved out its own niche, whatever. Like just a year before they started shooting this film, The Wild Bunch and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid come out. The Wild Bunch is a very violent version of kind of an old Hollywood Western. And then Butch Cassidy is kind of unique in its own way in the world of a Western. And then this one's kind of the dirtiest, even though it's not dusty. I don't know. I love it. Let's talk about the cinematography, shall we? Because Vilmos Zsigmond, I can't be quite right, but the cinematographer of this film, I didn't write it down, but when I looked him up, God, he's worked on a ton of things, a lot of really beautiful movies. This one, I mean, we mentioned it just briefly, but it looks stunning because they did a crazy thing to the film before they shot it. Usually you have nice, clean, pristine film, and you put that in the camera and you shoot some stuff, and boom, you go to develop it. These guys, they like flashed the negative, so they put some light on it, I guess, basically like destroying it a little bit, what could be called like, this is ruined film. But by doing that and then shooting their movie on it, it gave it this fuzzy, it's often referred to as like a dream-like kind of look that really makes it look like old photographs and kind of like an old, almost as if film existed back then. It was like, this is an old movie from 1880 and it just is in color and it's a feature film. But it really does kind of have that. My favorite shot in the whole thing is there's this like sunrise or sunset, and it's almost like creating a V with like these trees, and you see the sun, and there's this guy climbing the steeple of this church that's being built, and he's placing the cross on the top of the steeple, and it's just kind of this beautiful image of like the sun rising on the frontier, and they're bringing this church to life. I don't know, the whole town is bustling. There's so many great things, by the way. On the Criterion channel, they have the like Criterion edition, so you can watch all the behind the scenes stuff, and there's a documentary about the making of this movie. And I thought this was so fun, but the carpenters that were literally there to build the set, they were encouraged to like dress in period clothing and adopt a kind of character, and they shot the film in sequential order. So they started at the beginning of the film and they finished at the end of the film. It's often referred to as like a rare way to make a movie, because I guess, I don't know, seems like maybe it's more of a pain in the ass to be revisiting locations or something, but what's cool is you really feel the town growing, because as the film was being filmed, it is growing. And in the background of all the shots is the crew putting the set together, but they're in period clothing, and so they could kind of shoot while setting up the set. And it just, for being a film in 1970, it does sound like the making of it was very much in line with the hippie movement and counterculture. And, it sounds like a bunch of hippies went to Seattle, even though it was filmed in like Vancouver and parts of British Columbia. Sounds like a bunch of hippies went up there and built an old Western mining town, and they just like slept in their creation. They had this sandbox, and they were just in it 24/7. And Robert Altman would wake up and be like, let's shoot over there. And the cinematographer would be like, well, there's no cables. What do you mean we're going to shoot over there? It's going to take 3 hours to set it up. And Robert Altman would be like, yeah, whatever, take the time. I'm in no rush. Which he's a very unique cat. Seems like a very laid-back filmmaker, which, can you be a laid-back filmmaker? You're in charge of so many things. Yeah, man, that Leonard Cohen music was not written for the film. It existed before the film, and Robert Altman was like, that's the music I need. And so there you go. It's the Stranger Song and Sisters of Mary were particularly ones that stuck out to me as being pretty awesome. Yeah, man, that's what I got. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the film. I guess I maybe had some expectations that were not met, and that's my fault for having false expectations. I thought it was going to be something it wasn't. And by the time I got into what it actually was, I was in love with it. Mind you, I love watching Warren Beatty do anything. He's a handsome fucker. And Julie Christie is so good. So I'd watch. That was, you know what? My one note, Robert Altman in heaven. This is my note for you. I just wanted it to be a TV show, right? I was like, I want to watch these two characters like it's Cheers or Deadwood, but these characters. I want to watch McCabe and Mrs. Miller run this town and slowly but surely have their business relationship turn into a romantic relationship. It doesn't matter. Anyway, the show wound up getting made. Deadwood very much is McCabe and Mrs. Miller if it was a TV show. But I digress. We are going to have another pick. We are the Filmstruck Film Club. And if you don't follow us, you really should, because that's where you're going to find out about our weekly picks. I put up a little poster, some little blurb about what the movie is that we're going to watch that week. I tell you where you can watch it, obviously. And then, and then we post these reviews. So feel free to send me a message or hit me with a little comment or something. Let me know what you thought of the film. Let me know if there's any films that you want to watch. If you want to watch previous picks and you're just like dying to know what we watched in the past, in the link on my bio and Instagram on Filmstruck Film Club, boom, you can find it right there. Or on Letterboxd. If you used Letterboxd, you can go to the Filmstruck Film Club, what we've watched so far list. Bam, they're all right there. So enjoy. I'm so glad we watched this. Groot loved it. He loves Warren Beatty. Can't get enough of him. But yeah, see ya. We'll do it again next week. Bye.